Thanks everybody for dialing in. Skip, thank you for joining us tonight. I'm going to do a quick intro to Skip. It's always hard for me to remember all this stuff because I've known him since he was a little kid. So, matter of fact, I'm going to show a little picture here that might be, that might be really interesting for people. So, here, look at that bad boy, huh?
Oh my gosh.
This is Skip right here at the transom of a thistle at Put-in-Bay, Ohio, which is where I first met Skip. What are you, 15 in that picture? Maybe?
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, with the Jolly Roger thistle. Very nice.
My big brother on the bow, and he's like, hey, you got to tie that transom up.
Yep.
Get in the water.
He made you wade and get wet. I wish Sessions was on this call because he's tied his stern up in that exact same. Yeah. So anyway, I'm just having a little fun with you, Skip. That was a good one. So anyway, so listen, thanks everybody for coming. So here's how we're going to do this. We've got more people dialing in. I'm sort of constantly letting them in to the room. So we're going to let Skip go through his presentation. If you've got a question along the way, if you could just type it into the chat area so we don't have a lot of people trying to talk at the same time, that would be great. And then we'll open it up. I'll sort of unmute everybody and sort of make it a free-for-all at the end. But if you've got questions along the way, if you could do it that way, that would be great. As far as Skip, if you're here, you saw the written bio that the club put out. Skip's he's one of the more accomplished sailors on the planet. He's a two-time Rolex Yachtsman of the Year nominee. I think also a U.S. Sailing Sportsmanship nominee or winner or something like that. And is a 2015 Etchells World Champion and has won sort of another over 30 championships in other classes and other major regattas. So he's one of the guys you definitely want to listen to when you're trying to make your boat go faster and have better finishes. And we thought it was kind of a apropos thing to talk a little bit today about how do you get ready to go racing? Since we're all sort of in a holding pattern anyway, we thought this was a sort of a reasonable thing to talk about. So Skip, I'm going to leave it over to you. And for everybody, I'm going to just spotlight Skip on the video. So you're stuck looking at him and not looking at me. And that's usually a good thing. So thank you everybody for being here, and Skip, over to you.
Yeah, so let me, I'm going to do my share screen here. And if you guys can see that, I'll get it fired up here. So thanks for having me. This is good fun. I gave this presentation a few weeks ago to the Chicago Yacht Club and got some good feedback on it. So I was pretty excited to be able to do it again. And what we'll talk about, we'll get into a little bit of the agenda, but we're basically, getting to the race course, and from pre-event to the morning of, to the sail to the race course, and so forth. So it's hopefully you get some stuff out of it. I think you will, and I think what you're going to find is that the more you develop routines in the game, that it doesn't matter if it's sailing or if it's golf or anything else. That you develop your routines and you minimize some of the outside noise. You'll tend to be able to get to where you want to be in terms of performance a lot quicker. So Matt gave a little intro. I'll show you a quick slide on that, and then pre-event responsibilities. We'll talk about the race day. Sailing to the race course, and what you'll probably quickly see through this list is that it's sailing at a certain level. You got to break these things down into every single segment of what you're going to do in that day, all the way down through checking in. You're like, okay, Skip's going to tell me how to check in. Well, it's part of another process, and I'll get to that in a bit. Sailing up and down, starting line homework basically, and then adjusting your plans on the fly. Not going to talk too much about strategy, not going to talk about too much about picking the side of the course or whatnot, but getting the information to then go into your strategy is what we're going to talk about. So here's a little intro of me. You can see some of the classes here. I think the box is kind of in the way, but most of my successes come from the Midwestern One Designs Matt and I share a couple of the championships in the Highlander class, and Flying Scots, MC Scows, all the way through keel boats of J22s and Hobie 33s. More recently, been basically sailing a lot of big boat stuff. And so I raced on a Santa Cruz 70 called Equation out of Detroit, and was their tactician for a few years and won MAC races a couple times. That was good fun. And been a sailmaker. You can see there, I've been with most of the major brands over the last 25 years. I've done quite a bit of coaching through the years. I spent a lot of time in the fin class, not only developing sales, but coaching some of the top names in the fin class. And I then spent some time with the Mexican Sailing Federation with their Lightning team for the Pan Am Games. So not only did I have a good opportunity to go to the Pan Am Games in 2011 with the Mexican team, but after a few years, I teamed up with my old friends, Jody Stark and Ian Jones, and we won the qualification regatta a year ago September, and then we went to the games last July in Peru, and that was good fun. And I retired from sailmaking in March. Joined the Chicago Yacht Club as their waterfront director. We were just joking, Matt and I were, about I started with Chicago Yacht Club on the 16th of March, and the governor shut everything down on the 20th of March. So I had 4 days on the job before I was relegated to my house. Things are loosening up here in Chicago a little bit. Not much, though. The harbors are still relatively empty. People are launching boats, but we're hopeful in the next week or so that we'll be getting some activity. So fingers crossed, because we're all kind of stir crazy here. So moving into the things that we're going to try to talk about here is setting up your team responsibility. So if you think about it in terms of getting ready for a regatta, getting ready for a weekend, what have you, some of the things that you can break down: boat prep, registration, notice board, who's got these responsibilities, scratch sheets and SIs, all that stuff's going to be virtual these days. There's not going to be a notice board that you're going to walk up to and crowd around to see results. Everything's going to be online. We all know that in a lot of our, post-COVID kind of setting up regattas. And then we'll do a little bit of daily routine talk and talk about coaches' briefings and time, boat call times and stuff like that. And then who's going to be responsible for electronics, rig tune, and if you've got crew gear, who picks it and what days, and so everyone matches. So boat preparation, the bigger the boat it is, the more there's going to be to do, and the more people that you'll have to take care of stuff. And the smaller the boat, the more it relies on really what you're going to end up doing. I like to use the example of the Etchels, and we usually sail 3 up in the Etchels. And so some of the teams that I'm with will divvy up these responsibilities. And for example, I'll take care of the rig tune. Another person will take care of organizing who's going to dive the bottom for the weekend or for the week, whatever the championship is. Who's going to polish the hull before it goes into the water? Do we have a boat captain to do that, or is it the whole committee that just then grabs a rag and makes it happen? Bigger boats, the sail inspection, the prep, the bat intentions, all those things go into getting ready for racing. So you got to divvy those responsibilities up, and just make sure that everyone buys into that responsibility, so that the stress is low, everyone's ready to go. You even get to the point of, when you get the rig up, you give somebody the responsibility to then go around the entire boat to make sure that all the hardware and pins are ready to go. Talked a little bit about the registration notice board, some of the virtual stuff. Here's a screenshot of the of yacht scoring, which I think we've all probably used a little bit. There's a couple other ones out there, but you can see that over here on the right-hand side is all the meat of the race documents, and then a lot of the other stuff pertaining to the boat that you're racing on or the fleet that you're racing in. And like I said, most of this stuff is going to be the new norm now. It's going to be the notice of race and the sailing instructions, all the notices, everything's going to be online. There's not going to be any competitors meetings that we all remember. So it's going to be one of those things where you're going to want to know what the host website is, or what the host regatta website is, so that you can get all your documents, you can print them, you can laminate them, and divvying up a lot of these facets here for quick references, so that you don't have a surprise. And we often joke about going around the race course and who knows what course 4 is, who knows what course 5 is, and if you happen to be leading the race, you're like, wow, man, I hope that I got the courses right. That's what I'm getting at here with the no surprises, so that you don't have to freak out and the stress isn't any higher than what it needs to be. Daily routines. I'm big on routines, especially once you start getting into the regatta scene. It's everything from when you wake up, who takes care of the lunches and the drinks, who's going to go to the competitors meeting if there is one. Maybe it's on Zoom. They got to make sure that they have good Wi-Fi, perhaps in a separate room in a crew house or what have you. Notice board, who's going to check that, who's going to communicate what the changes are, if there are any, who develops the boat call and the dock off times. Those are pretty critical, because all your teammates are going to be revolving their personal routines around those times when you get off the dock. I got consequences for being late. Santa Cruz 70 that I raced on Equation, we typically had 16 people on board. And if you were late for the boat call, you owed everyone on the team a round of drinks. And that could get pretty pricey for 16 people, especially that crowd that likes some good drinks. So electronics on some of the boats that we sail, it's not a big issue. The smaller boats, it's you usually have the small tactic compass, and it's all solar charged. But a lot of the newer electronics need to be charged at home at night. So who's going to take care of that? And I don't want to underemphasize this, because on a few of the teams that I'm on, there's a lot of finger pointing when a Velocitech or a VHF isn't fully them. So you want to make sure that you got everyone sorted out on that, and who's responsible for those electronics and charging them. Like I said, I like to take care of the rig tune myself. Here's a quick little picture of wet notes. I've got, I think, 5 active ones right now. This is one from this is a wet notes from an Etchells. I know that because it's a 4 stays 48, lengthened to 48. These are benchmark numbers that are just off the top of my head that I know that correlate to some of the Etchells stuff. And this is an Etchells mast over here. So what we like to do with the rig tune is we always start the day at the base setting. We leave the dock at the base setting. We end the day, we get the boat back to a base setting. So you're always leaving the dock with a base. And that's important, because then you can document where you got to throughout the day, and then back it off, and then just take the tension gauge and see if it correlates to all of your numbers. But this is important, because at the end of the day, when you got everything cleaned up and you're ready to go to the cocktail party, someone's got to be disciplined and just look at where the rig ended up that day, and to try to then recount where all the turns that you made throughout the day, and make sure that it all correlates. Always have the weather factored in for the day's racing. And you can see down in here, we've got some of the wind stuff, some of the positioning stuff that we talked about during this particular race day. Started at the pin, wind went right 20 degrees off the start. That race didn't end well, I could tell you that right now. But you can see that we went down on the caps and down on the lowers quite a bit, so the breeze came down. When you have your weather forecast for the day, you have an idea of where you're going to go throughout the day in terms of rig tune, and that's the point of all these notes here, is to make sure that you can learn from what you did that day and try to put it into a plan for the next day. So some of my race day routines is I'll wake up and I'll check the weather. If we have a subscription weather, we'll check that out. Prep the team with info, coach briefings. I'll get into these a little bit more in detail. Coordinating with the tuning partner and organizing the coach boat, namely making sure that the coach has some beer for the end of the day. So some of the race day weather apps, we all have our favorites. You know, this is just a screenshot of my phone and some of the things that I have on page 1. Page 2 is some of the more common stuff that you know, the Weather Channel and stuff like that. But there's some current apps that are on race 2 as well. Here's a I'm getting a note here. Can you guys hear me okay? I'm getting a note.
I can hear you.
Oh, okay, good. Because I had a note that I was muted. Maybe I said something wrong. So here's one of the apps that I really like. It's called Windy. And the reason that I like this is because you can take surface information on the wind, and then you can elevate. You can see over here, you can go with an elevation. This one's 2,500 feet. And then what I like to do is I like to go hour by hour and just see what the trends are, both at the surface and at 25,000 feet. And I'll show you a picture of that. This is a very nice app. It's got a lot of bells and whistles. And what I like to do, and I was turned on mostly by one of our coaches, Dave Allman. He really likes the European model, and it seems to be quite accurate for a lot of the sailing we do down in Florida. So I'll take the windy data that I'll get off that app, and I'll create a column here for surface winds. You can see some of the trends here in both direction and velocity, and this is the time of day. And then I'll go with the 2,500 feet, same thing for each hour. And you can see the strength at 2,500 feet versus the direction, and then correlate that to the surface to see if there's any trends. Generally, the higher elevation wind will make a change a little sooner than the surface wind, unless of course there's some heating and sea breeze effects. But I do this every day for our teams, and we talk about it in the early briefing, and then we'll revisit it at the end of the day as well. Another app that's growing in popularity is called Lucky Grip, and it's pretty robust. And I don't use all of its functionalities, but one thing that I really like about it is that it has the HRR model for wind. And the good news about the HRR model is that it's not a snapshot of a long period of time into the future. It's really only 18 hours. And so it's very, very accurate in terms of what it's telling you for the time that you have, and it updates, I believe, every hour. So it's pretty sweet, pretty sweet app. And I suggest you take a look at it. I think you get 30 days free, and then it's $25 for a year or something like that. But it's pretty accurate. In fact, I talk about a story of, there's Matt had a picture of the Put-in-Bay Regatta where we all had met when we were kids. I was doing some coaching over there, and I pulled up my Lucky Grip in the morning, and I was telling the kids, I said, hey, you should probably start near the boat, tack out to the right side, because at about the time you're going to start, there's going to be a huge righty. And sure enough, it came in. So all of a sudden, I had this reputation of being like this weather whisperer, and I didn't have anything to do with it other than I looked at the Lucky Grip, and it actually came in when it did. And so from that, a lot of the parents were asking me what apps I use. And this one's, like I said, gaining in popularity, and I like it quite a bit. But I'll do the same thing here. Is I'll write down the time, the direction, the velocity, and it gives you a good idea of what to expect. And everything's, all these forecast models aren't terribly accurate, but they're close enough that you can actually plan out the day. And that's the point here, is using the information to plan out your day. Weather subscriptions, they're quite nice because it takes it to the next level. Sailing Weather Services, that's the Chris Bedford group. They do a really nice job. You can see here, they give you a synopsis of what's happening throughout perhaps the region that you're sailing. They'll give you some just general weather, temperature, and then it starts getting into some detail over here on the right when you can see the tables with the time, some of the trends, and what they're predicting. You can see here it says oscillating breeze for this given point in time. I think this is for the Etchells Midwinters in Miami. and then some hedge factors and some things to kind of look for. Commanders does a nice job. There's a group in Australia called Clouds. There's a number of different subscription-based weather programs. You know, we'll use them for the bigger regattas. For the smaller regattas, usually most teams that I sail on will just use the apps that we have, and if it's a practice regatta, for sure, that's what we'll do, and then tool up for the bigger regattas. So if you're lucky enough to be on a team or with a group of teams that have hired a coach, one thing that you'll do first thing in the morning is get together and you'll have a briefing. And so what I like to do is bring all my notes from the weather, any subscription information that we have, and then just open the discussion to make sure that the teams and the training partners that you're with all kind of understand what's going on for the day. And then we'll discuss goals for the day. You know, generally that goal setting can be, we want to finish a certain way. Goal setting could be we want to stay somewhat consistent. It could be we want to make sure we get to the top mark on the first beat by a certain, in a certain group. We don't want to lose boats downwind. Those sort of things is what we'll discuss in the morning. And then, what the coach can actually do for us. And generally down in Miami, or if we're at a world championship or whatever, and there's some current, we'll ask the coach to kind of get us some current observations and any wind trends that they actually see on the race course. Tuning partners are important. We haven't sailed without one in a long time, and getting together in the morning and discussing your pre-race routine is super important. Understanding what each team's goal is equally important. Here I coached these two J70s down in Miami, and each of these teams had different goals for the regatta. But the good news is they both finished in the top 5, and they achieved what they were after. But getting together, developing a game plan, discussing what each boat thinks is going to happen throughout the day, and in the end, you want to work to make each other faster, because if you're helping your tuning partner get faster, they're ultimately helping you get faster. And I often talk about the time when when I got into the Etchells class in 2012. I didn't really know much about the boat. In fact, our first regatta was the inshore Verve here in Chicago, and we barely knew how to put the boat together. But we became friends with the guy from Texas and became tuning partners. And we were tuning partners for over the course of 4 years thereafter. And 2013, this particular partner won the world championship. 2014, we both finished in the top 5. In 2015, we won the world championship. So it was a very, very successful partnership. And we both learned a lot, but it was open book in the entire time. Because the goal was to make each other faster.
That one, hey Skip, can I add, that one can work against you if you pick the wrong tuning partner, which Skip and I did in Key West one year, and then we thought we were fast, and it ended up we weren't. So be thoughtful about that selection.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. So sailing to the race course, lots of times, you're basically just trying to get things organized, and you're trying not to get too wet, and you're just trying to map out what the day is. But you could start implementing a few things that they'll start developing some intel for the race day. I like to do a lot of wind shots. Matt knows this because we sailed last time we sailed together. We sailed the Highlander Nationals in his home waters in Pennsylvania, and it's pretty shifty stuff, and we wanted to see what trends there were throughout the day. So we, on the way to the race course, we'll do 10, 15 wind shots just to see if we can see what kind of trends going on. When you're doing these wind shots, maybe perhaps you have some wind speed instruments that helps you with understanding the sail choices that you may have. Gear selection on the way to the race course is going to be pretty important, because you want to be comfortable. You don't want to be too cold. You don't want to be too hot during the race. A lot of times we'll have crew meetings. I'll talk a little bit about that here in a second. And then the reminder of what the goals are for the day and the expectations are of everyone. That's a good, solid list of things to try to take care of on the way to the race course. So periodic wind shots what I like to do is set a timer on a watch, and every 3 or 4 minutes. And when it goes off, you just stop what you're doing and you get a wind shot and you start plotting them. And you can see here again from my wet notes example, these were wind shots that were done every 10 minutes. And I wrote them down in such a way that as the number went greater, you write the number to the right. And if it's lower, you make it to the left. So you can visually see if there's any trends here. And in this particular case, it went, 50 degrees over the course of an hour. So something major was happening at that point in time. But this can be done, like I sail thistles, we put some sail tape down on the grating, and we just, use a grease pencil or whatever. If you don't have the ability to carry around a wet note, find a way to pencil on the deck or whatever to really get a good understanding of what's going on beforehand. Staying disciplined on the way to the race course is very difficult with a lot of things that are going on with crew. If you're on a bigger team, there's a lot of chatter and discussion about what the social the night before or whatever is going to happen, and so it's tough to stay disciplined. But if you set a timer and you talk with the afterguard or with your teammates and say, listen, we got to get our intel for the day's racing, and we can get a lot of information on the way to the race course. And then you can start to think strategically based on what you're getting with these wind shots. And obviously this is a right-hand race course day or morning for that matter. And so, here's some port and starboard numbers. You can see the same correlations going on. So starting up the line and going right, that's what I'd be thinking if I saw all of this on the way to the race course. Talked a little bit about sail selections. Here's a crossover chart for a Carkeek 40. There's a lot going on here, but you've got the true wind speed along the top, and you've got the true wind angle along the side. If you're doing some distance races, you can make some choices based on what you're seeing pre-race. A lot of the cool electronics will have a floating dot that will go through, where you plug in the first leg of the race, and it'll show you based on the floating dot what sail you're going to choose. So it takes a lot of the guesswork out. But nonetheless, the whole idea is on the way out to the race course, you want to make sure that you can make the right sail selection. So some of the things that you might consider, and I'll go back to the Etchells here, where we've got 2 jibs that we can choose from. Is are you at crew weight? Are you at the max crew weight, or are you a bit lighter? If you're a bit lighter, you may go for the heavier jib a little sooner. If you're at max weight, maybe you stay with the rounder jib a little longer. Is the wave state such that you might want to go with a sail that's got a little bit more punch to it than something that might be a little flatter and a little less forgiving? Is the wind going to increase or decrease? These are things that go into the sail selections, so that you can make some good solid decisions on what to use. What I like to do is keep all, if it's a bigger boat where you have many sails to select, I like to keep the sails downstairs as long as possible, because the second one comes up, you start getting into that mind frame that, well, this one's up, we can use it, rather than just staying focused on what you see and what you expect. Downwind considerations. You can see here there's a bunch of different A sails on this particular boat. And so one thing you want to try to do is determine whether or not, on a Carkeek 40, if we can get up on the step and we can get the boat planing, we want to make sure that we have a slightly flatter sail than we would if we were just going to soak low on a windward leeward, for example, in a VMG mode, which would be an A2 or an A4 at that point. Here's the Santa Cruz 70 lineup for a particular race day that I pulled out of my wet notes here. So this is, 16, 17 people, and, I've got a lot of the jobs here. But, what I like to do on the way out to the race course with these particular big teams is talk about, crew positions and make sure that everyone is on board with what they're going to do for that day. Discuss some expectations, get the small teams within the big team. Like if you have grinder and trimmers together, and then the foredeck and the mast, and get those guys together and get them talking strategically about how they're gonna take care of the boat for that particular day, and more open up communication so that everyone's on the same page. One thing that I like to do is encourage involvement with, it's a little bit tough on a big boat like a 70-footer to get the guys in the front to help out with the wind calls or what they see or angles on different boats. But, we do a good job of passing back that information and passing forward some questions of what they see. Keeping eyes out of the boat is very, very important for all crew. And it's something that everyone should try to encourage, especially the newer folks, because it's so easy to get so wrapped up into what your job is going to be inside the boat that you lose sight of some of the bigger picture stuff. What's the goals and expectations for the particular day? Again, this is probably the page before that Santa Cruz 70 thing. We talked on this particular day. We wanted to look at the rig tune. We wanted to adjust some new sails. We wanted to do some really crisp race sets and douses and work on exits out of the maneuvers. I think on a prior day to this, the driver was coming out a little fat out of the tacks, and the grinders were getting a little grumpy because they were all loaded up trying to get the Genoa in. So we really needed to polish up on that. But, setting expectations both in terms of what you're looking to do with the boat and what you're looking to do with the race is super important. I like to focus in on good starts. Good starts usually yield good finishes. Certainly you don't want to wreck. You want to be top third at the beat. Even if you pick the wrong side, you want to try to get to the top third of the group. And you want to manage the top third of the beat for sure. That's where a lot of stuff happens. And if you can get in and get out clean, things happen really, really well. Crisp roundings and sail changes. How many times has the kite come down too late or too early? We just want to make sure that all that stuff happens well. And this is all part of what you talk about on the way to the race course. It sets up the day for some good fun for sure. Sailing forward is the last point there. It's a lot more fun than sailing backwards, that's for sure. So we made it out to the starting line. We're at the committee boat. Certainly you want to check in. You want to confirm the race, the posted race course. You want to look at what time you have and how much time you have before the start, so you don't lose track and get caught way upwind when the sequence has started, or not enough time to do your starting line homework. And then, once we check in, we try to find our tuning partner. Hopefully we left the dock at a similar time. Sometimes they leave sooner or later, but you check in, you want to find them, intercept them, and get on with what it is that you guys set up to do before you left the dock. So the tuning partner, I talked a little bit just now about what we like to do. We'll set up kind of a game plan. It's got to be a little bit loose because you may be short on time or you may have a lot of time, but a plan that typically works is you want to do a straight line, 2-boat test, and then you want to do some splits. That's ideally if you've got 30, 45 minutes, you can get that accomplished. Straight lines on etchels, it's super important to make sure that when you line up properly, bow to bow, and then, if you have an edge, try to understand why you have an edge. If your partner has the edge, try to figure out what might be different. Perhaps you stop at one of the lineups and you talk about, rig tune or whatever. You notice that the leeward shrouds are a little tighter, a little looser. Make some adjustments. But what I also like to do is I like to go through the range of adjustments on all the sails and all the controls to make sure that we're not working too hard to make the boat feel good, and a lot of that comes from the helms person that's going to give you that feedback on whether or not the boat feels good or bad, or it's, it has a nice wide groove, or if it's just too tough to sail. Starting that dialogue and then checking in with your tuning partner is super, super important. We here in this particular case, we have a coach boat chasing us around. And you try to set up, you know, for sure beforehand in your briefing before you leave the dock, what channel you're going to be on with your coach. Do you have private radios? Do you have a VHF? Whatever it is. And then whatever the coach can try to analyze. And this is a pretty powerful picture here because you got two completely different setups and the boat's reacting as if there's two completely different setups. You can see the boat here to leeward, it's got a lot of bend in the mast. The lower stripe and the mid stripe are flatter, and the boat is sailing flatter. They're set up pretty nice. This particular boat here, round mainsail, not as many overbend wrinkles, and heeled up quite a bit. So that would be that'd be good feedback from a coach to say, okay, you need a little bit more mast bend here. Can you go with the ram forward, or do you need to pull on some more backstay? And the coach may sneak around and check the forestay sag and check in on that as well. If this has too much sag, then you just take care of it with a little bit of backstay and you'll have the same look and the boat will probably be the same. So those are some things that a coach can help you with when looking at the setup. 2-minute splits are what we try to do. Sometimes we'll do a little bit longer. If you do any longer than that, then you start losing track of the shifts that may happen in between those time intervals. So studying the compass is super important. Studying the wind speed is super important. So, you know, you do a 2-minute split and you come back together, you can have that conversation with your partner and say, yeah, it went right 5 degrees and we got a bit more pressure than you did, so that you can then summarize, okay, well, it was just a localized shift, or there's a trend that's actually happening that's bigger picture. Sailing the beat and the run. We're going to talk about, you know, when we're going up and down, rig tune, sail trim marks, document the compass readings, you know, notice any trends, and then some geographical influences that we might see. This is, again, all pre-start, heading upwind, and then on the run as well. So rig tune, as somebody who sits in the middle or on the main trim quite a bit on boats, what I like to do is I like to correlate how the main sets up with how the head sail sets up in terms of sag. What you want to try to match is the mast bend that you can achieve as you start tightening up the forestay. If the main washes out too quick before you get the forestay tight enough, then your shrouds aren't set up properly. If you can't flatten your main and your forestay takes over, chances are your shrouds are a little bit too tight. So you want to try to figure out those ranges. And generally speaking, most one designs that I race, it's all in the set up the mainsail, and then you check in with the forestay on how it sets up as you get going. Fortunately, in a boat like an Etchells, you got the ram and the butt, and you can move things around, and you can get to the point where you want in setting up that mainsail to correlate with the forestay. Things have changed. Back in 2012, it was all the mast blocks, and you really had to focus in on the forestay length. Now we've got the collar where we can pull and push and pull the mast and really achieve what we're looking for. But one thing, you know, as you're just sailing along, I like to watch the forestay to see if it's bouncing. If the forestay is bouncing, you know it's too soft. So then you check in on your backstay, you pull it, see if you can get rid of the bounce, but you don't want to kill the mainsail. That's the whole point here. One of the things that seems to travel across most one design boats is checking in on your leeward shrouds. Once you're sailing, once the team's up and hiking, how soft are your leeward shrouds, or how tight are they? Are the cap shrouds still engaged, meaning are they still tight when you're fully trimmed up, or are you starting to see some looseness in those cap shrouds? That's important, and what that setting actually is varies from boat to boat, but it's one thing that I'm getting more in tune with as I travel across all these different classes, is understanding how those leeward shrouds are setting up. In the Lightning, for example, it's you know, the cap shrouds are set. That's a class maximum thing. So you get your cap shrouds to the class 250 pounds, and then on a particular type of sail setup, the Proctor setup, I like to trim the main in, get the team hiking, and then trim a couple clicks harder and watch that leeward lower just disengage. If it doesn't, then I know I'm too tight. If it disengages way too soon, then I know it's too loose. So a lot of those things that you could start putting into play into the boat you sail. So, you know, how the boat is sailing. And again, we're just talking about rig tune pre-race, and how it's sailing and the type of helm that you have will tell you a lot. And if you're a helmsman and you're relying on somebody to take care of the rig tune for you, the best thing that you could possibly say to that person is the boat is very difficult to sail, or the boat is super easy to sail and it feels really nice. That sort of feedback of what the helm is telling you is good to give to the tuning person, because then they know if they got to do some major work, or if they're really zeroed in on the settings. Reference marks and sail trim. This is and it's nothing new, but it's something that you know, when we start doing round robin events or match race events, it's something that I tend to get reminded that I enjoy on the boats that I sail. On this particular boat, you can see the backstay here has a batten on that's taped on, and there's probably some marks here on the pennant to give the trimmer and the main trimmer in particular a quick reference on how much backstay there is set up in this particular time. On the Etchels that I sail on, we have marks on the main trim that you could see along here that that show, you know, just how much or how little main you have in as a quick reference mark. Certainly the spread back here is another visual reference, but if you can generate some cool, quick reference marks on your trims, it's going to work really nice. Spreader marks for the jib, those are generally outlined in tuning guides, and it helps the jib trimmers set that sail up in a target zone, and then you can trim a couple clicks in or ease a little bit from there. Certainly in the pre-race, you want to watch the compass and try to develop any trends. You know, like you saw in my wet notes, we had a little bit of a right trend in that example that I had written out. But you know, this particular case, this boat's about ready to enter into a puff. If somebody's studying the compass, you'll be able to then quickly figure out if the puffs are righties or if the puffs are lefties. Now, you may not have that kind of correlation throughout the day, but at least you're looking at it and you're able to then try to put something to what's happening. Matt and I sailed, like I said, at Pine Tuning, Pennsylvania, and he knows that lake like the back of his hand. And so we would position ourselves in such a way with the wind that was out of that direction to go to the right side of the course or the left side of the course, whatever the case may be, because he knew what those trends were because he had sailed there so often. But if you're sailing in a new venue where you haven't been before, you've got to really pay attention to what's going on, and that can give you a lot of good information. And then does it correlate back to what you had in the weather that you had earlier in the day that you analyzed, and are the patterns matching up to what the forecast was? Geographical influences, you know, this is big down in Miami when we sail up under Key Biscayne. If you got some breeze that's just coming, you know, if you're looking to the top of the screen here, this would be the east to Key Biscayne. If it's more out of the north, you're going to get some divergent breeze, which sometimes opens up the left side. So what you'll see is if the weather mark is anywhere near Key Biscayne, and you'll see a bunch of boats just march out to the left side, and typically it'll pay, because as you get higher up the race course, you'll get divergent breeze, which makes the left pay. If it blows directly offshore, it's going to be shifty, or off the land, it's going to be super shifty. If it's off the right-hand side and your mark is down near the shore, you're going to have what's called convergence. So those are pretty typical types of breezes that happen around the shore. And you know, again, pre-race, if you can have a somewhat of a game plan to try to figure that out, it'll help you out. And when you think back to one of the points I made about, you know, the last third of the beat, if the last third of the beat has this mark tucked up underneath the shore, you're certainly going to want to hedge what you can learn pre-race, and come in from that favorite side for sure. Sailing the run, then, you know, many times we'll have all of the information that we can gather on the beat, and then, you know, put the spinnaker up, and then we'll start chatting about the run. And one thing that doesn't happen often enough on a lot of the boats that I sail is the second point here in developing a habit of looking at the compass downwind and making the same markings in terms of, you know, what the number is on starboard jibe, port jibe. The problem with compass work downwind is that any sort of velocity change, especially in a more traditional spinnaker pole boat, the angles can change greatly. You know, you heat up when you're in the light and you bear off in the heavy, and you do that in asymmetric boats as well, and those angles become quite great. So you want to try to wrap your mind around how much of the angle changes there are going to be for that particular day, and then jibe over and get the same numbers, and then you can correlate what you're jibing through in terms of angles, so that you can, you know, as you progress down the run, you can plan out the bottom half of that run really well. You know, the Etchells has, you know, VMG spinnaker, and it has a full radial running spinnaker. Most sail makers are in the class are offering those. In many different classes, those are the choices you have in terms of a flatter, more efficient shape versus something that's round and a little bit more, you know, pole aft sort of thing. And so you want to make sure that you confirm that spinnaker selection pre-race when you're going downwind and you're getting your numbers. You want to make sure that you're in the right spinnaker. And looking at the forecast that you had, you know, perhaps it's breezier in the morning and it's going to die off in the afternoon. When do you make that switch to the VMG spinnaker, which isn't as big and round and won't drag as much? And just making sure that you have a game plan for doing that, and making sure that the next spinnaker is ready to go.
Hey, Skip.
Yeah.
One thing I learned from you on the boat is how important it is to have that plan for the run before you get to the weather mark, right? Because especially in a crowded fleet, it's so easy to be focused on the top end of the beat and getting around the mark clean, and all of a sudden you've extended a couple hundred yards on starboard. You've set your spinnaker and extended on starboard, and three people behind you have, you know, jibed on a port and jumped inside you and with a nice puff or a nice wind shift. And Skip, you taught that to me. I think, I don't know where we were, but like, it's a really important thing that you were just talking about. I wanted to highlight.
Yeah, and what's important is that last third of the beat, it really studying what's happening, you know, and you know, Jeff Iber, who sailed with me a bunch, is really good at being able to diagnose why one side paid versus the other. And hopefully we were on that side, but many times we're not. And, you know, he'll quickly say, well, they're just playing with more pressure over there. I don't see anything on the compass. Or he'll say, hey, the number went that way. Either way, if that particular side paid because of shift or because of breeze, and there's a trend there, that's the side that you gotta really pay attention to. And so in that last third of the beat, if you're coming in and you got a huge lefty, and you know that it's a huge port lift, you're gonna want to be on the starboard header on the way down. And going back to the Miami, you know, convergent breeze, where everyone races out to the left side and comes in late, you know, on port tack, and seems to make it work. They stay starboard tack as long as they can. They get away from that convergent breeze, and then the breeze goes back right a little bit. You jibe onto port, and it seems to work pretty well. But yeah, you want to definitely have a game plan for the run formulated on the last third of the beat, based on what you've seen and what you're experiencing, because the gains upwind in angles and wind shifts are pretty significant, but downwind they're enormous, and you can make huge gains if you're in phase downwind for sure. So sailing the run, one of the things that you know, and Matt, you know this for sure, is communication all the time. And you know, as a driver, I usually wait 25-30 seconds before I ask the question, and the question will be, how's the pressure? And you know, hopefully the spinnaker trimmer switched on and will tell me what the pressure is as often as they can, or as often as it changes. And if I don't hear something, I will prompt the conversation and say, how's your relative pressure right now? Because what I'm searching for is oh, great pressure so I can drive lower sooner than everyone else. If there's no communication on an increase in pressure, you're just losing lateral distance all the time. So what I like to do is I like to bait the trimmer into what's going on with the pressure, and then correlate that to the compass number, which I'm looking at as a driver downwind, is I'll look at the compass. And so if, say, for example, we're tracking 100 and in a puff, we can get on port jibe, we can get down to 110. I'll be asking, like, I'll feel maybe a little bit of pressure. I'll ask, do you have pressure in the kite? Because I want to get to that 110. That's 10 degrees lower, all things equal. If they've got the pressure. If they don't have the pressure and you try to drive low, you're just going to lose. You're going to lose distance forward. So setting up the communication, that's what's important here. And then correlating what they feel in the kite to what the compass number is, and just making sure that you can dance your way down that run. That's the point here. So before we get into the starts and the starting routine, this is all the stuff that we do before we get to the starting line and do our starting homework. So responsibilities, what you do. You have responsibilities, routines, and you're buddying up with the tuning partner. And why you do that, you want to reduce stress on the game day, establish consistency, and learn with your buddy as much as you can. So those are the takeaways that I hope you have from these, what seem like super simple routines, but if you plug them in and you do the same thing all the time, chances are you're gonna reduce stress, you're gonna be more consistent, and you're gonna learn from your tuning partner. So starting line routines, what I like to do is like to use the compass as much as I can, and I'll give you some examples on that. Continue doing wind shots and continue to document what you're seeing and what the angles are, and seeing if there's any correlation. Checking your starboard and port upwind numbers to see if they correlate with what you already had when you sailed upwind already. Talk about line sights and pinging, and then find your ley lines at the starting line and why you do that. So before I start, because I gave this presentation a couple weeks ago, and I received 2 emails. This starting line diagram is not correct. It's supposed to be on this side of the buoy. I'm just pointing that out so that you guys don't think that I pulled some kind of bad graphic here. It's the starting line should be from, if they're sighting it here, all the way to the course side of the buoy rather than the bottom side of the buoy. Finding the favorite in a line. Simple way to check it. This graphic kind of shows it all, and this is what we teach a lot of our high school kids and junior sailors, is that when you do a wind shot and you're not perpendicular to the starting line, whichever side of the line your bow is pointing, that's the side of the line that's going to be favored. Seems pretty simple. It's very difficult to do when you've got a humongous line and you're trying to figure out whether or not it's close or not. I told you guys that I sail quite a bit with Jody Stark. She is an awesome sailor. She can do this wind shot, check the starting line, and she has the eye for it. I like to use the compass a little bit more, but this is a quick and easy way to check it out. If you're late to the starting line and you're just trying to figure it out, do this. If you've got time, do the rest of the homework. So here's the rest of the homework. So what I like to do is, first thing I like to do is I like to get a line sight, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. But I'll come in behind the race committee boat, I'll come up to the flag and I'll run the line, and I'll get a compass number as I run the line. Whatever the compass number is, I know that if I'm turning to the starboard, I got to add 90 degrees, what that is. So in the above scenario, I'm tracking 290 down the line. You add 90 degrees to it, 380 minus 360, it's square to 20. In this particular case, the SAM here is showing 0 degrees for the wind. That's 20 degrees to the pin, just doing this simple math. And I know a lot of you guys know this stuff, but if you just put it into a routine, come around, get that compass course down the line, do the wind shot. And if they don't move the committee boat or the starting buoy at all, you can continue to do wind shots to see if it equals itself out or if it stays at this 0 number here. Back one, there you go. So there's a lot of equations that are thrown around, and what David Dellenbaugh, who was our coach for both my team and Marvin Beckman's team for 3.5 years, he used to say that for 100 feet of line, every 5 degrees gives you 9 feet of advantage at that end. So if you start extrapolating how long the line is, for 5 degrees, it can add up pretty quick. For 10 degrees, it can add up quite a bit. And so I threw this picture in. This is Don. You might remember this regatta. This is the Newport Worlds, where there.
Oh yeah, I was buried somewhere behind you.
This is nearly 100 boats. We have a midline boat here. This is us right here, and I'm not certain how we got away with it because I believe this boat, and then this one, and Shannon, they were all over early. So we were either nicely hidden or got really lucky. But I threw this in here to kind of drive the point home on if one end of the line is favored or the other, and by how much. So this line was about a 1/4 mile long for 95 etchels. Coach Dave Dellenbaugh told us that 2 things. One is, he was like 15 boat lengths favored at one end or the other for 5 degree bias. 15 boat lengths we will take any day of the week at the start of the race. So we had to really mind that. The other thing he said was at just regular hull speed for a 1/4 mile, you couldn't get from one end of the line to the other without actually and still be able to do your homework. So he had us circling the midline boat until we had our game plan intact. So those were cool takeaways. He also did a lot of stuff with scoring with us so that we wouldn't get freaked out when we had a 20 or a 30. And, frankly, that helped us, because if you get a 20 or a 30, you're thinking that it's all over, but that everyone except for the guy who won, who didn't have to race the last race.
By the way, Skip, if you look at this photo, the second boat from the bottom is number 879. And that happens to be Bill, what's his name? From San Diego.
Yeah.
He didn't have to race. He didn't have to race the last day.
It's super impressive series that they had, and they were in a whole different ball game. I mean, they were going so fast that whole week, and that was we always tried to hike really hard, but they hiked really hard, and that's the game these days. The harder you hike, the faster you go, and it's not easy on a Nachos because there's no hiking straps. So you gotta find a way.
Skip, that was me there pushing Shannon over right under the transom.
Right here?
Yeah, 1085.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, that I remember this race well because suddenly everyone's peeling out. I think this is Bruce Gollison here. And,
yeah, Billy Lynn, I think.
Yeah, so everyone was peeling out, and we had this huge lane for what seemed like a long time. So it was really cool. So thanks for pushing her over, because she would have been over the top of us for sure.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So talk a little bit about line sights. So if you sail a boat that doesn't allow the pinging function, like a Velocitech Pro Start or Atlas, you've got to really rely on what's around you and your awareness of what's happening. So I like to get a lot of line sights, and Matt, this from sailing with me, that what we'll do is we will get a line sight, and essentially what you're doing is you're lining up the flag in which they're calling the line and the buoy, and you're trying to pick something over on shore that's going to give you a nice reference. So I like to come on the outside of the committee boat over here and look through the committee boat and try to find what is the actual drop dead line sight. And then what I'll do is I'll sail to the transom of the committee boat, and I'll line that up with the buoy, and I'll find a safe line sight, and then determine whether or not that's 1 length, 2 length, or whatever, so that when you're starting in this area, you can zero in on that safe line sight and provide yourself some runway. And then the bow person knows where that drop dead line sight is and can tell you straight away if you're good or if you're not good. And then you listen to the radio and whatnot. But getting a line sight that's true, and then getting a line sight that's safe, those are the two things that I like to do. And you can't always get them because perhaps the wind's out of a direction where there's nothing on shore or there's nothing out in the lake or whatever. But majority of the time you'll have some level of a reference mark either through the pin or through the committee boat. And as we are approaching the starting line for the start, I'll say something to the effect of, you know, find the White House or find the water tower. And so that gets all of us fixed in on where we are on the starting line. And then I can defend the guys around me, the boats that are coming in and whatnot. And then, you know, forward guys got eyes on the line sight, which is pretty important. Pinging the line has become a little more fashionable in some classes with the legality of the legal pinging devices. This is a picture of an Atlas device that's the latest generation of relatively low cost GPS-based line pinging. And so essentially what you do is you go past the committee boat. In this particular case, it's probably backwards, but the committee boat, you hit the ping button, you go past the pin, and it'll give you, you know, once you get into the ping boat, it'll say boat end, it'll say pin end. And then in this particular case, you could say it, you know, you could see it gives you some metrics down here at the bottom. It tells you what your heading is. It gives you time to the line. It gives you distance to the line, and it gives you what your speed is at that particular point in time. It's kind of like cheating, really, you know. Like, you know, that's part of the beauty of sailboat racing is, you know, is that we do start on an imaginary line, and so so it's what it is. And these devices are super nice, and it creates chaos in the pre-race homework phase because everyone's trying to get the perfect pin. But you know, in those classes that allow them, it's still jockeying to make sure that you have a wide open lane. Make sure that you're defending your hole, all that stuff, but also checking in on what these numbers are.
Hey, Skip, can I just chime in for 1 second, which is don't go out just race day and practice pings and starting. Set up a line and go out and learn to use your equipment over and over on a practice day so that you have confidence. You know, we're 10 feet away and we're going this fast and all the rest.
And, you know, this past winter, Dave Ullman had us in the Etchels. We're not allowed to use the pinging devices, but he'll set up a proper length starting line, and we'll have a rolling clock with us and our training partners. And, you know, each boat will need to hit the line at the starting time, and then a minute later, the next boat comes in, hits the line at the starting time, and he gives us feedback on how far off we are. So it's really, really good practice, and we're supposed to do it without a line sight and then do it with the line sight. So like to your point, Don, you get out and you practice doing this stuff, and you develop the, you know, consistency in what you see and what you feel on the starting line. And ultimately, the more confident you are on the starting line, the better off you're going to be getting off the line and implementing your strategy. The last one in the pre-start here is the lay lines, and I like to do this pre-start as part of my homework, so that I can visually see what the angle is coming into the boat end on a true close hauled course, and coming into the pin on a true close hauled course. As I'm doing that, I'm also looking on shore for a transit or a line sight, so that if I get stuck out here, down in this area, I know that I've got to get down in here so that I'm not coming in too late and barging. And similarly, if I tack a port approach and I tack over and I end up where number 3 is here, and I've got some kind of line sight out here, I know my goose is cooked, so I got to double tack and get back inside. So finding those lay lines is super important pre-race as well, so that you can figure out where the boundaries are on the starting line and just develop your mind's eye to to understand what's going on the starting line so that you don't get caught on the outside or caught on the inside. So one of the boats that I sail on, we're lucky enough to have a drone pilot on the coach boat. And the good news is that that the guy who runs the program is very generous with all this stuff, and he sends it to the race committee at the end of the day for each race. And the race committee is very appreciative of it. But you can see here's two different starts. You know, the flag's down over here. That's where we stop the video, that's where we screenshot, and that's where we draw the line between the two ends. You see the one on the left, obviously the one on the left, the pin got a little unruly. The one on the right, nice clean start. But you can see that there's opportunities here if you have a nice clean line sight to not give up. Now, in this particular case, it's probably, 7/8 of a boat length to get up to that line. And we'll take that 7/8 of a boat length anytime we can get it.
And
But,
Skip, I would add one thing. One thing that was hard for me was transitioning from the little ponds that you and I grew up sailing on. And you come out here and there's a 4-knot current. And, these ley lines to the starting line and these lanes in 3 to 4 to 5 knot current they're really important, right? I mean, we Tad Lacey's on this call. We were on a big boat series a couple of years ago where you could be at full speed at the boat and not make the pin, right? Like these things are really important to think about as you're setting up your strategy. And I think Don's advice of going out and practicing is a great way to understand how that's working.
In some teams, Matt will even, like they'll make a practice run at a start if they have time pre-start. They'll just run a clock and they'll just try to set up like you said. They'll try to set up for a boat end and they'll quickly find out that that's not going to work. So perhaps, you develop a different starting strategy if you have time to make a run at that line pre-start. One thing that, we sail Lightnings, and the old Lightning Southern Circuit used to go to Savannah, and Savannah had crazy tide current. And so, that's one thing. I sailed with a guy named Larry McDonald from Canada. We would practice start way in advance of the start of the race. And then we actually kind of raced the course to try to find out where all the little nuances of the river were, because it's where two rivers come together and it's absolutely insane. So we got, basically we've done all of our homework. We're off the line, we're getting going. And so now you start to implement a strategy that you developed with all the information that you gained from the time you left the dock. And right away you're trying to decipher whether or not the numbers are true, how your speed is, are you in phase, which tack is the lifted tack, and looking up the course, is there good breeze up the course, are we going the right way? Steve Hunt, who we all have either know or heard of, he is he's really methodical in his approach, but he's also super simple and saying that, if you're on the lifted tack and you're in better breeze, chances are you're going faster to the top mark. So it's just breaking it down that simple. It's coming off the line saying, are we on the lifted tack and are we headed for the breeze? And hopefully pre-start, down to 3 minutes, you can look up the course and you can kind of decipher where that next puff's going to be and get to it first. That's the whole idea. And one of the things that, on the little ponds for sure, that's one thing that we look upwind all the time to see if there's a puff on one side of the lake or the other side of the lake, and then making sure that we make a good effort to get to those puffs straight away, and hopefully have enough intel to know when that puff hits, we got to get to port tack right away, or we got to get to starboard tack right away. Another thing that a lot of teams and a lot of sailors are really good at, and you can't stress it enough, is when you come off the line, how are you going with the boats around you? And that's super important for feedback for the boat speed person who's doing all the trimming and all the controls. It's good for the helms person because they can either lean on the jib a little bit more to go faster, or perhaps you're plenty fast but you're not pointing high enough. They can adjust the angle of attack to make sure that that they're in the same type of mode that the boats are around right off the line. So then you can fine tune and try to get that extra bit of speed if it's through controls or if it's through angle of attack. But staying in pressure, lift attack, like I said, that's the Steve Hunt way, and keep everything as simple as possible. Recognizing gains and losses, you know, checking in on the numbers, working hard to be as fast as you can. Knowing every point counts is important, and sailing forward is so much more fun than sailing backwards. So if you have a speed problem, diagnose what it is as quickly as possible, fix it as quick as possible, and try not to get frustrated and start passing. Every leg, there's an opportunity to pass boats. Every corner, there's an opportunity to pass boats. You just got to know who you're racing and whether or not you're making gains or losses and making adjustments. You know, we talked a little bit about the end of the first beat, which side paid, why, was it pressure, was it shift, was it both? You know, Jeff Iver's really good at that. And those are the conversations that we have leading into the top mark so that we can develop that strategy down.
Skip,
Yeah.
Tactics look a lot better when you have boat speed.
Totally. No question about it. Faster the boat, the easier the race is. Absolutely. So that's why we spend so much time doing the two boat stuff, or we're doing, you know, a day before the regatta to just get everyone, you know, get the footwork down, get the sails set up right, go through the ranges of the controls, all that stuff. That's why you'll see teams show up to a championship days in advance to try to make sure that they've got, you know, they're gaining local knowledge, obviously, but they're also trying to rein in all of the controls and the tuning and everything to make sure that they're going as fast as they can. Absolutely. So in recap here, we got, you know, we divvied up the pre-event team responsibilities. If you recall, we were talking about, you know, everything from polishing to divers and all that other stuff. Then the routines for the day, getting the weather, meeting with the teams, meeting with your tuning partner, meeting with the coach, sailing out to the race course, getting your wind shots, and just generally talking about goals and teammates and making sure that everyone's on the same page. Then starting line discipline, which is probably the biggest point here that I seem to seem to have gravitated towards in the last 20 years, is making sure that I spend plenty of time on the starting line pre-race so that I can become comfortable with where I'm going to start and how I'm going to set up the race. And then recognizing and adjusting your game plan. By that I mean, again, if you recognize that there's a major wind shift, you got to, and your pre-race strategy was opposite, you got to make the tweak, and you got to recognize whether or not it's going to be persistent throughout the day or if it's going to come back. A lot of times on boats, we'll talk about, you know, the forecast, the wind went certain ways pretty hard. Can it go any further based on what we know? And then, you know, make sure that you adjust your strategy accordingly. So with that, thank you very much for listening. I know it's, we've taken this sport and we've, you know, it's like anything, you know, the more you do it, the better you're going to be. You know, we've just talked about you know, from the time you wake up to the time that you get to the starting line. And so there was nothing about tactics, nothing about strategy. There's a whole lot of stuff that you could talk about, but as you're going out to the race course, it's super important to make sure that you do what you can to make sure that you're going fast and sailing smart.
Hang on, I just want to ask a quick question. I believe this photo is taken in Hong Kong at the Etchells Worlds that you won.
That's correct, Don, and thanks for recognizing that. I didn't even set you up for that.
Hi, Skip.
I would root for it.
Yeah, Skip, we definitely have some questions from the participants here, so I'm gonna leave it open for a minute. I know Jenny's got a question about jib tops. Tad Lacey's got questions about when you're doing a round robin thing like the Masters or the Lipton Cup, like how you deal with some of that kind of stuff. So I'm gonna leave it open for a couple minutes here for questions.
The Commodore can go.
Ladies first, Jen. Go ahead. Ask about the JT.
Skip, thank you very much for your time this evening. And I've had the privilege of sailing with half the people on this call. And I think there might be hundreds of years of experience between you all. So last weekend, I sailed an informal race, unsanctioned, to Stockton. And I learned about the jib top, and I heard our crew talking about that making the difference. I am newer to the sport. I've not heard of a jib top. So I did some research, and it talked about how the clue was much higher. Why did that make a difference in a downwind race? And would that have made as much of an impact as we thought between first, second, third?
Yeah, so a jib top is, it's typically a sail that fits between Genoa and perhaps a code 0. And if you don't have a code 0, it'll fit between the Genoa and your flattest spinnaker.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a different shape altogether. It's measured as a Genoa, so you're going to be as big as the rule permits. But you're right, the clue is cut higher, and it's trimmed typically to the spinnaker block in the back of the boat, and then you have what's called a downhauler or hickabilly that will pull the clue so that you can adjust the leech accordingly.
Okay.
So what that sail is designed to be is it's super flat on the back end, and when it's trimmed normal to the spinnaker block, it's usually in a lead aft position, so it's got twist to it. So when you're sailing just off of a beat and you don't want the attached flow as much off the backside of the head sail to the mainsail, it's twisted up so it releases that breeze, but also gives you the horsepower of the big sail, if that makes sense.
Well, Commodore, I'm going to tell Michael that made the difference. We didn't have one. That's why we lost.
That's right, sweetheart.
And as a sailmaker, I'll tell you that it's a very limited wind range for a JT. It's really, really limited. What tends to expand it a little bit is putting a staysail inside of it on the wider angle, so that if you got a GS, a Genoa staysail, you sail that inside, and so you're double headed, and then the mainsail. Wow. So a GS and a JT are really, really fast when you're on the wider part of the wind range. If you're on the narrower part of the wind range, you strike the Genoa staysail and you trim the jib top as tight as you can. And again, you're going to have a floating lead on the back end to try to control the leech. And basically, the person that's controlling the leech is also looking at the mainsail, make sure it doesn't break up, so that you got decent flow between the two.
I'll share that feedback. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
So, it's Tad. Skip, great presentation. Very well thought out, a great outline. How would you adjust your thinking, both pre-race and during the regatta, if you were sailing in a regatta where there were no instruments, you were no marks on the settings, you were changing boats, there were 4 races a day, and you're quickly changing races and immediately going out to do the next start of the second, third, or fourth race. And it seems to us that have done it, and Matt and Donnie and I have done it together, you kind of just frantically get moving from one boat to another to get out to the next start. Almost no time to shoot the line or get anything. What suggestions would you have to us who are sailing with no instruments on a J105, no speedo, no nothing?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I've sailed a regatta called the Championship of Champions a number of times, and it's a similar situation where you're jumping into a boat that's not anything like the one you just left. So what you've got to do with the time you have is just become comfortable with the boat. And I think what I would do is I would trim for upwind right away and just see what the boat feels like and give feedback to the team on whether or not it's, the helm was good, if it had a wide groove, a lot of the seat of the pants stuff. How does the boat feel? And is the boat happy? If it's a struggle to sail it, try to figure out how to rein in some of the controls to widen the groove a little bit. But without instruments, it's all what you feel underneath your seat, and how the boat can react to more trim, less trim, and just finding those ranges as quickly as you possibly can.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for Skip?
How do we do on time, Matt? Did I?
We're all right.
All right,
Yeah.
good.
So I want to say this. Unfortunately, I found this out after we started that we sent a thing out, Skip, called the Bow Wave, which is like our electronic email that we send out to all the members, and it had a link in your bio and all that stuff. And apparently, somehow between last night when I practiced this with our communications people and today, that link got broken. So we didn't have the participation that I was expecting to. But I'm so glad we recorded it, and we'll make that available, to our membership. And I gotta say, Skip, like I've known you since you were, I don't know, 10 years old or whatever it is, but it's really great to see you. Like this is a great presentation. I think it was a great overview. It's very timely because we're all really excited to get back on the water. And I think the only racing I've done so far is mixing it up with Ethan and Don and lasers on a little lagoon here that makes Pima look like a very steady wind.
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that. We're so thankful that you spent some time with us, and you've always got a place to have a Mai Tai when you come to the Bay Area in our yacht club. And so for those of you that don't know, Skip very recently took the job. I think some of you were on the phone when he said this, as the sailing director, the waterfront director, I think they call it at Chicago Yacht Club. We're also going to be exploring ways to partner with Chicago Yacht Club and maybe do some Midwest, West Coast traveling when we're all allowed to do that again. So I'll just thank you so much, Skip, for your time today, and enjoy your new job. And hopefully I get to see you at least once in person this summer.